The president announcing on Christmas Day that the U.S. launched a strike against ISIS targets in Nigeria.
On Christmas night 2025, while billions celebrated around the world, Tomahawk missiles lit up the Nigerian sky. President Trump called it a Christmas present to terrorists. But what the mainstream media didn't tell you could completely change how you see this story. Today, we're exposing the untold U.S. aid connections, the prior warnings everyone ignored, and the uncomfortable facts that got buried beneath the headlines. What you're about to hear isn't conspiracy. It's documented history that major outlets conveniently left on the cutting room floor. Let's start with what actually happened December 25th, 2025, between 12:12 and 1:30 a.m. local time. 16 GPS-guided precision munitions launched from Reaper drones, alongside Tomahawk missiles fired from a U.S. Navy vessel, struck what officials called ISIS camps in Nigeria's Sokoto state. Trump announced it on Truth Social, calling it a strike against ISIS terrorist scum who had been targeting and viciously killing primarily innocent Christians at levels not seen for many years. And even Centuries. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed the operation, adding ominously more to come. But here's what's fascinating. Trump himself admitted to Politico that the strike was originally planned for December 24th. He personally delayed it by one day to, quote, give a Christmas present to the terrorists. The Nigerian government confirmed cooperation. Foreign Minister Yusuf Tuggar spoke with Secretary of State Marco Rubio for 19 minutes before the strike, and President Tinubu gave the green light. Sounds straightforward, right? An ally asks for help. America delivers. Case closed. Except it's not that simple. Here's the first thing media coverage glossed over. The strikes hit Sokoto State in Nigeria's northwest. This region is home to 4 million people, the overwhelming majority of whom are Muslim. It's also the historic seat of the Sokoto Caliphate, one of the most significant Islamic institutions in African history. But when Trump and conservative commentators have been discussing Christian genocide in Nigeria, they're typically referring to violence in the Middle Belt, a completely different region in central Nigeria where Christian farmers and Muslim herders clash over land and resources. Security analyst Kabir Adamu confirmed that one town hit. Jabo has no known ISIS-linked cells operating there. Even more striking, residents of Jabo told reporters they were confused and terrified. One villager said, quote, we have never experienced anything like this before. The Nigerian government should take appropriate measures to protect us as citizens. A 40-year-old farmer named Sanyusi Madabo described watching the sky glow red, saying it was almost like daytime. Debris from the munitions landed approximately 500 meters from a primary health center. So the question becomes, if Trump's stated justification was protecting Christians from religious persecution, why strike a predominantly Muslim area where locals say they've never experienced ISIS attacks? Now let's talk about what almost no mainstream outlet mentioned: America's deep financial ties to Nigeria's military. Between 2000 and 2022, the United States provided, facilitated, or approved more than $2 billion in security assistance to Nigeria. This includes weapons, equipment sales, and over 41,000 training courses for Nigerian military personnel. The headline item: 12 Super Tucano warplanes delivered as part of a $593 million package approved in 2017, complete with bombs and rockets. And there's more in the pipeline. A nearly $1 billion deal for 12 AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters was announced in 2022. That sale was initially held up in the Senate due to human rights concerns, but procurement eventually moved forward. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Over that same period, America was supplying billions in military aid. Hundreds of Nigerian airstrikes killed thousands of Nigerian civilians. A 2023 Reuters analysis found that more than 2,600 people were killed in 248 airstrikes by the Nigerian Air Force over just 5 years. Most victims were identified as communal militia, a catch-all category that includes local self-defense forces and so-called bandits. The most notorious incident. In 2017, a Nigerian airstrike hit a displaced persons camp in Ran, killing more than 160 civilians, many of them children. An Intercept investigation later revealed that attack was referred to as an instance of U.S. Nigerian operations in a formerly secret U.S. military document. So, when Trump threatens to cut aid to Nigeria over violence, he's threatening to cut aid that has itself been linked to civilian deaths. Now let's rewind to November. It's 2025 and the warnings that set the stage for Christmas night. On November 1st, Trump posted on Truth Social that he was instructing the Department of War to prepare for possible action. His exact words were, "If we attack, it will be fast, vicious, and sweet. Just like the terrorist thugs attack our cherished Christians." Warning, the Nigerian government better move fast. He simultaneously announced Nigeria would be designated as a country of particular concern for religious freedom violations and threatened to immediately stop all aid and assistance, saying America may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns a-blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists. Nigerian officials initially dismissed this as a negotiating tactic. An advisor to President Tinubu called the remarks just that, tactics. But clearly, Trump wasn't bluffing. Now, here's the data that complicates the entire Christian persecution narrative. According to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, out of more than 20,400 civilians killed in attacks between January 2020 and September 2025, 317 deaths were from attacks explicitly targeting Christians, while 417 were from attacks targeting Muslims. The organization didn't include the religious affiliation of the vast majority of civilians killed. Their 2022 report found that although Christians constitute roughly 50% of Nigeria's population, violence explicitly targeting Christians on the basis of religion accounted for only 5% of reported civilian targeting events. Oluwal Oiwal, a Dakar-based African security analyst, told CNN that Trump's binary framing of the issue as attacks targeting Christians does not resonate with the reality on the ground. Former Senator Shea Husani put it bluntly, saying the narrative that the evil terrorists only target one faith remains absolutely false and misleading, and that the ultimate security and peace in Nigeria lies with Nigerians themselves, not with the U.S. or any foreign power. The reality is that Nigeria's violence is driven by multiple overlapping factors. There's the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast. There's the Islamic State West Africa province, which has between 8,000 and 12,000 fighters according to the UN. There's the newly emerged Lakurawa faction in the northwest. And there are the farmer-herder conflicts in the Middle Belt that have killed hundreds and displaced over 2 million people since 2019. These farmer-herder clashes are rooted in competition over land and water resources, worsened by climate change and population growth. Yes, the herders are predominantly Muslim Fulani and the farmers are predominantly Christian. But experts say the conflict's origins are economic and environmental, not primarily religious. Nigeria's Foreign Minister Tuggar made this clear when he told CNN, "This is not about religion. It is about Nigerians, innocent civilians, and the wider region as a whole." He added that when you talk about terrorism in the Sahel, the majority of victims are Muslims, not Christians. So what does this all mean? This was the first time the United States has ever directly conducted airstrikes in Nigeria. It sets a precedent. And the justification offered, protecting Christians from genocide, doesn't align with where the strikes actually landed or what the data shows about who's being killed. Meanwhile, America has spent decades and billions of dollars arming and training Nigerian forces that have themselves been implicated in serious human rights abuses without meaningful accountability. Retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Layton, a CNN military analyst, noted that while these strikes could disrupt ISIS operations in the short term, The long-term issues surrounding violence in Nigeria are extremely complex. He pointed out that strikes like this usually need to be part of a larger campaign, and that larger campaign simply isn't visible. NNAMDI Obasi from the International Crisis Group agreed, saying the airstrikes might weaken some armed groups, but they are unlikely to halt the multifaceted violence that is driven largely by failures of governance. The question isn't whether ISIS deserves to be targeted. It's whether the framing matches the facts, whether the strategy makes sense, and whether anyone is asking the hard questions about America's own role in this decades-long crisis. Because if we're serious about stopping violence in Nigeria, we need to understand what's actually causing it. And based on everything we've seen, it's a lot more complicated than the headlines suggest.